Social and Emotional Learning, or SEL. Now, you might have heard this casually brushed aside as just teaching soft skills. Being nice, sharing your toys, but let's dive right into this explainer because looking at the actual frameworks and hard data today, we're going to see that SEL is absolutely not just a soft skill. It's a highly structured, data-proven necessity for both academic and life success.
To really ground us, take a look at this. This is a real, hand-drawn picture from a student at Medina Elementary School titled How to Be Calm. You can literally see this kid trying to navigate their own overwhelming feelings, right? They're repeating the phrase, "I can do it," and counting down from 10. It's a perfect reminder that before any high-level academic learning can even happen, a child has to figure out what to do with all this internal noise.
Okay, let's dive into this. How do we actually translate all that raw, overwhelming emotion into actionable learning? Well, it starts with a structured four-step process. 1. Say the problem. 2. Think of solutions. 3. Explore the consequences. And 4. Pick the best solution. This is SEL in action, right here. It takes the abstract, messy chaos of growing up and turns it into a concrete, repeatable skill set.
So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, what exactly is SEL? Second, we'll look at the 5 core competencies. Third, we'll dig into why SEL matters. And finally, we'll see SEL in the classroom.
All right, Section 1. What is SEL beyond the acronym?
According to the official framework, social and emotional learning is the process through which children and adults acquire and apply knowledge, attitudes, and skills to manage emotions, set goals, show empathy, maintain relationships, and make responsible decisions. Now, the absolute most important word in that entire definition is process. We're not talking about a one-off worksheet here. It's an active, ongoing daily practice, and that goes for both the students and the adults guiding them.
Moving on to Section 2, the 5 core competencies, also known as the SEL framework. If that definition we just looked at is our mission statement, this SEL wheel, which stands for the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, is the blueprint. And this brilliantly illustrates how these 5 domains are completely interconnected. I mean, think about it. You really can't have responsible decision-making without first having some self-awareness, right?
Let's briefly walk through these 5 pillars so we know exactly what they look like in plain language. First up, self-awareness. This is just being able to accurately assess yourself and label your feelings. Next is self-management, which means taking that awareness and actually acting on it, regulating those emotions and managing your stress. Then we shift outward to social awareness. That's all about perspective taking and having empathy for people from diverse backgrounds. The 4th pillar is relationship skills, so communicating clearly and resolving conflicts effectively. And finally, responsible decision-making, which is evaluating the realistic consequences of your actions and behaving ethically. It's this continuous, beautiful cycle of internal regulation and external interaction.
Section 3, why SEL matters. Let's look at the data-driven impact. Trace this flowchart with me from left to right. This comes straight from the research highlighted in the Medina Curriculum Guide. Over on the far left, we kick things off with explicit SEL skills instruction and teacher practices. When that happens, we move to the middle box. Students actually acquire those 5 SEL competencies we just broke down. That naturally leads to improved attitudes about themselves and their school. And if you follow that arrow all the way to the right side, the outcomes are crystal clear. Positive social behavior, fewer conduct problems, less emotional distress, and ultimately, measurable academic success. It is a direct, causal pathway. Which brings us to a pretty staggering number, 11. Across a massive meta-analysis of 213 rigorous studies, students receiving quality SEL instruction scored an average of 11 percentile points higher in academic performance than those who didn't. Making time for emotional regulation actively accelerates academic learning. That is just a massive leap.
This really highlights the dual benefits of SEL. On the left side, you've got the positive outcomes, greater motivation, better grades, and a deeper commitment to schoolwork. But then look at the right side. It simultaneously reduces negative behaviors. We're talking decreased anxiety, fewer disciplinary referrals, and less depression. It is an incredible 1-2 punch. So SEL isn't just about boosting the good metrics, it's actively dismantling the very barriers that prevent students from learning in the first place.
All right, Section 4, SEL in the classroom. Let's talk about practical implementation.
I want to ground this section with a quote from the source material that perfectly captures this whole philosophy. The best learning emerges in the context of supportive relationships that make learning challenging, engaging, and meaningful. This is the absolute core truth of the classroom. If a student doesn't feel emotionally safe, if they don't feel supported by a relationship with their teacher and peers, academic rigor is virtually impossible. You have to build that relational foundation first.
And here is how that foundation actually gets codified into learning standards. Let's translate some of this educator speak into reality. This is Illinois Standard 31A, which focuses on managing emotions. Notice how it scales up. In early elementary school, the goal is simply to recognize and accurately label an emotion, like I am feeling frustrated. But by late elementary school, the standard evolves. Now students need to describe ways to express those emotions in a socially acceptable manner. So we're going from a first grader learning to say they're mad to a fifth grader realizing that being mad doesn't mean you can just hurl your pencil across the room. It's a very clear developmental progression.
Let's look at one more example, perspective taking. In early elementary, a child simply recognizes that someone else might experience a situation differently. It's the very seed of empathy. But by middle school, as the brain matures, the standards demand a lot more. They have to actively analyze how their own behavior affects the people around them. The standards grow in complexity right alongside the maturing brain of the student.
But you know what the real secret ingredient to all of this is? The teacher. Kids learn by watching the adults in the room. You can't just teach SEL from a textbook. It has to be modeled. And that is exactly why our source material maps educator evaluation systems, specifically the widely used Danielson framework, directly onto adult SEL competencies.
Now what's really fascinating here is how teachers are held accountable to that exact same causal wheel. In the Danielson framework, evaluating a teacher on respect and rapport actually requires that teacher to utilize their own self-awareness and relationship skills. To manage student behavior effectively, a teacher has to model social awareness and responsible decision-making. Literally, a teacher's own self-awareness dictates whether their classroom feels safe enough for kids to actually learn.
And this shows what a successful SEL integrated lesson actually looks like in practice under Domain 3 of that framework. Look at the evidence here. Student-led discussions, students working rather than just watching, open-ended questions, and the teacher acting more like a mediator in conversations rather than a dictator. When SEL is truly working, the teacher is able to step back, and the students, who are now fully equipped with self-management and relationship skills, are empowered to step forward and take ownership of their own learning.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this explainer, from a child's raw crayon drawings all the way up to state standards. But the big final takeaway is this. Whether you are an educator, a parent, a manager, or just a community member, SEL is a process for adults too. The children around you are constantly watching how you manage stress and resolve conflict. So how will you model social and emotional learning today? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.